Welcome to Golic and Smetty.
I'm Mike Golic.
I'm Jessica Smetana.
Welcome to another edition of Golic and Smetty. Mike Golic Sr., Jess Smetana. Jess, it has been a while. I somewhat like and Westwood One, my Sunday night guy is Ryan Radke, who does play-by-play with, but I haven't been with him the last couple of weeks because I had to do the Monday night game, and we were together on Sunday, and it was like getting to know one another again. I almost feel like that's what we have to do here.
I feel like so much has happened in the sports world since our last podcast together, Mike. I mean, the last time we talked, the USC Trojans were a top 10 football team. The 49ers were unstoppable. Like, so much has happened. I don't even know where to begin.
And I don't even care about the sports world. Jess, how are you doing in your life?
I'm doing well. If you're wondering what this is behind me, I'm currently recording this from Meadowlark's New York studio. So this is Pablo Torre's backdrop for his podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out. And
what is it? Is it a painting or is it a...
No, it's like a LED screen.
Okay.
And apparently, like, they have the technology where they can put up a live stream of the Miami studio on the back of this wall. So, like, you could theoretically, like, call into Miami and pretend like you're there. So, I don't know. I might need to stay here and test out this technology for a little bit. But, Mike, things are going well. I really enjoy being up in New York and feeling a little bit of the seasons change for a minute. So, I'm enjoying myself.
How long have you been up there?
Like 4 days. I've been reacquainted with my tiny coffee cup place. This place in New York has just the cutest little tiny coffee cups for macchiatos.
That's not
Look at how adorable this is.
Yeah, but that's not a cup of coffee. Unless it's a straight caffeine or espresso.
It is. It's like a double shot of espresso. It's like an Italian macchiato. So I've learned this through the years. Starbucks, apparently, their macchiatos are really just lattes because they put like a shot of espresso and then a crap ton of milk. But a real macchiato is just espresso with like a tiny splash of milk. And that's why they put it in this tiny little cup because it's not a lot of volume. Okay. So I love to go to this place and drink my tiny little coffee. It's so cute.
So I'm going to ask the question because I drink coffee.
Like drip coffee.
Yeah. I don't know. What is a macchiato?
So a macchiato is just espresso and a tiny splash of milk. And then there's a cortado, which I believe is espresso and then 2 ounces of milk. So it's like equal milk to espresso. And then a latte is like espresso and then like a lot of milk. And I don't like that much milk. So I drink the macchiato.
So just for wondering, like I get a cup of coffee, I get a big cup of coffee. When you get that macchiato, that tiny little cup.
It's so cute.
How much does that cost?
I want to say like $3.50.
Okay, I actually thought it would be more. It
depends where you go. Some places, the most expensive coffee is like the cold brew now. There are places in Miami where a cold brew is like $8. It's mind-boggling. But no, these are not that bad. And these are, if you go abroad, like Americans, we're the only people apparently that drink the drip coffee. If you go abroad, they don't have they don't brew coffee that way. You can get like an Americano,
right,
which is espresso and water. And so I'm not European. I just love espresso, but it does make it easier. Like when I was in Ireland, just ordering my little macchiato, I didn't have to do the whole song and dance with the American coffee.
That's where it was in Ireland. I was trying to get some coffee and they had a machine and nowhere did it. I was looking for it to just say coffee, but you would expect that out of me. But the only thing close was the Americano, and I didn't know what that was, and I was I was literally just staring at it till someone came up and said, "Do you want something in particular?" I said, "Yeah, I just want a friggin' cup of coffee," because there must have been 10 choices up there, right? And I don't know what the hell all of them are. And they said like to what you said, like drip coffee. I said, "Yeah, a basic cup of coffee is all I want." They said the closest you're going to get is Americano. So just hit that one. And I just thought that was like regular type drip coffee, but you're telling me that's Americano is not like regular coffee.
No, it's like watered down espresso. It still tastes good. Like if you get an iced Americano,
fine. Yeah,
it tastes kind of like an iced coffee. It's not that different, but yes, it is different. And they do not drink drip coffee there. So you can't just like go into Starbucks and get like, a venti drip coffee without having to explain.
Last thing I want to ask you before we get to what's changed in the world of sports since we last chatted was when you go in and order coffee somewhere, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, coffee shop, And do you drink cold brew or hot?
I love co I drink I generally drink year-round cold brew, except if it's cold outside and I don't have gloves.
Okay. So if I walk in and I say I'd like a large cup of coffee, should that be understood that I want hot dripped coffee? Or is that too broad of a statement in today's world of coffee where I need to say I'd like a large hot coffee?
It depends how you phrase it. I think if you say you want a large cup of coffee, that implies hot in a hot cup
Okay.
with a lid.
Okay.
If you just say you want a large coffee, like,
Right.
that could mean anything. You could get, that I mean, the
So I
possibilities
so
are
I need
endless.
to specify hot now.
Yes, 100%. Cold brew has taken over the world. It
I
is
agree with that,
so
but
good.
shouldn't you have to say I'd like a cold brew or because isn't there different kinds of cold brews?
There's nitro cold brews now, which are like the nitrogen one. Those are like rocket fuel. If I have one of those, I will be extremely productive for 2 hours and then sleep for 5 hours
Right,
after that in the
right.
middle of the day. So I try to like limit my nitro consumption. But yes, there are I mean, and there's
Okay.
also iced coffee versus cold brew versus like the
Right.
nitro cold brew.
So I
But
figured you guys, you cold coffee drinkers should have to specify what you want and me as what's been a regular cup of joe for decades, I should be able to say I'd like a large cup of coffee and it should be inferred that it's a large hot cup of coffee.
I think that baristas probably get yelled at more on average than any other service workers, so that's probably why they ask so many qualified questions. Because people that don't have their coffee go absolutely
Yeah.
crazy if they don't get it made the right way. So I don't yeah, you gotta be
All
specific.
right, all right. I'm glad I've been educated on a macchiato and because I've heard
Look,
of all
it's
those things.
just so adorable.
Listen,
It's so
a
cute.
latte, I'm not going to lie. When I see people get a latte and they get the whipped cream on it, it looks like dessert in a cup.
Yeah,
That's what it looks
I
like.
can't do that much sugar in the morning. Again, I will take a 5-hour nap if that
I would
happens.
have to. I would imagine the sugar and fat content of a latte has to be incredible, right? It has to be worse than a dessert.
It probably depends what kind of milk you get, if you get any, like, pumps of flavoring in it,
Hmm.
but I just like black coffee. I just want
Oh, really?
I want
Okay.
my coffee to, like, hurt. I wanna feel it. I don't want it watered down. Like, that's why I get a little macchiato, just got a tiny, tiny splash of oat milk.
Okay.
Nothing serious.
So you
Well,
want
it's
the
actually it's foam. I don't think you actually put milk in it, but some people make it the wrong way. It's just like a tiny bit of foam.
effective coffee. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm looking for a feeling as if I've just taken a large stimulant, which I
Okay.
have,
All right.
technically.
I am just I'm amazed at the whole coffee world now, especially the lattes, because it just seems like dessert in a cup to me.
Mike, I saw someone on so there's this woman on TikTok who shows like she films herself making people's orders at Dunkin' Donuts and someone ordered a 7 pump butter pecan, 7 pump caramel iced coffee. And she held up the cup and the like it was like one of those big Dunkin' Donuts
Right,
cups.
right.
It was clear. And this much of it was full of syrup. And
Oh,
then like a splash of coffee on top. I was like, what?
that's
And
horrid.
she took a sip of it and was like, "Oh, my chest hurts, like, this is terrible," and this is, like some woman comes in and orders this every day. I can't imagine having that much sugar in my
Well,
coffee.
that's the thing. It seems like these orders are everyday orders. That's
Or I guess there's coffee in her sugar technically,
yeah,
but
exactly,
yeah.
exactly right.
It's just like caramel sludge on the bottom.
It is amazing the different combinations you can get there. Okay, all right. It seems we've caught up now.
And we have. I mean, this tiny little cup of coffee is the only thing going on with me right now, and I love it.
I have never
So
seen
cute.
a shot of coffee that small unless it was
For
just like
scale,
now.
next to my giant head.
I will say the last time, when the Super Bowl was in Miami and I was doing, the morning show there, me and Wingo and my son Mike, and we had a setup there in Radio Row. We had those little shots. What are they called down?
Oh, the cafecito.
Yeah.
That's in Miami. Yeah,
Yes.
those are
They brought those up to our
ooh,
set, and
yeah.
again, it was tiny. I'm like, come on, I need to. They said, no, 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 you don't want a big cup of coffee, a cup of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard, like, Wingo almost died drinking
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had never had him before. And he started flying through them and was promptly told,
That's
dude,
scary.
pump the brakes.
Well, so that was the first time that I had tried cafecito also, and now I live in Miami, so we make like, every day in the studio, someone will make a batch and pass it out. It's like a little afternoon pick me up.
Right.
To me, like, it's not like I don't wanna start my day with that, but, like, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're dragging, like, it's the perfect little, like, shot of coffee, but that has so much sugar in it also. But the coffee itself is so strong that you feel it immediately. We always warn people if they haven't had it before, like take one at a time. It's like having like an edible or something. It's
Yeah.
like one at a time. If you don't feel anything yet, just wait
Yeah.
before
Trey
you
didn't,
have a second
Trey
one.
didn't listen to that. Trey just kept downing them. It sounds like at some point your body is supposed to get used to it.
Never.
Maybe not. I don't know, but it was an experience because I have not had the cold brew or the nitro or the iced coffee. I don't like my coffee cold. I never have.
Hmm.
And all my kids do it, as you well know, since
Oh,
you
I
know
know
them.
Gojo loves
Yeah,
that.
loves that stuff. I just haven't gone down that road, and I doubt I will. If I want something cold, I'll get an unsweetened iced tea or a Diet Coke or something like that as my cold drink,
Hmm.
and I'm good. So, all right, there we go. We have dissected the coffee world before we get into the ever changing football world.
Coffee's
And
more important.
yeah, coffee is more important. It is more life sustaining than us watching football. And even though your Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett is
Oh
had
gosh,
himself a game in a fourth
crazy.
quarter. But boy, a lot has changed. You're right in the NFL. Let's start with the latest, and that was just this past Monday night, where I mean, as we were getting ready to watch the game, my wife said, I think Minnesota is going to win this game, and no particular reason, and Minnesota did win the game. It was somewhat stunning to me. So you wonder, is San Francisco, who we basically handed the mantle of you're the best, deepest team in the NFL, has now gone back-to-back losses.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like the question this weekend was which team between like the 49ers and the Eagles. The Eagles had a tough test on Sunday Night Football against the Dolphins, one of the best scoring offenses in the NFL. Like which team would have a better rebound? And it's always tough playing on prime time, but the Vikings have not been very good this year.
No.
They don't have a great defense. Kirk Cousins can be very off and on sometimes. They do have a couple of really great wide receivers, and Jordan Addison had a huge game. But
Yes.
I think Deebo Samuel getting hurt and Christian McCaffrey maybe being a little banged up is not a great combination for San Francisco's offense, like not having those guys totally healthy, or even Deebo didn't play last
No,
night.
did
So
not play.
I I think it's surprising that they weren't able to find a way to win against a pretty weak Vikings team, but also like the 49ers, I kind of feel like I want to wait and see how like this is a team that November and December always down the stretch are really good. They just abuse people on the other side of the ball all the time, and they end up finishing the season pretty strong. So like I'm not that worried about them, but it is concerning, I think, that Brock Purdy didn't look
Yeah.
very good last night. He looked like he didn't have the weapons that he needs to play well, and it's not ideal for them if you need every single player to be healthy to
Well,
be able to win those games.
that's the point. I think is they probably have the deepest weapons on offense, and only one was missing. You still had Kittle, you still had Ayuk, you still had Christian McCaffrey, who scored 2 touchdowns.
Their offense looked so bad compared to a couple of weeks ago.
They did, and as far as the receivers in this game, Kittle had 5 catches, Ayuk had 5 catches, Jennings had
Okay.
5 catches, and McCaffrey had 3, and only rushed for 45 yards, but did have 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, he has now scored a touchdown in 16 straight games, which is crazy. He is one away from tying Lenny Moore in NFL history, and Lenny Moore did it in 1963 and 64. So that is crazy, but that is a worry on the offense that only Deebo was missing. And what Purdy didn't play great, certainly, but he wasn't the reason they lost. Now, we did have 2 fourth quarter interceptions, two not very good throws, which certainly hurt. But look at on the defensive side, Kirk Cousins threw the ball 45 times, and that San Francisco defense had, count them, 0 sacks. Zero
Yeah.
sacks with that defense led by Nick Bosa. So that was surprising to me that happened. And I wonder now, which makes it interesting, because we've basically handed San Francisco the division easily, and wondering who they'll play, if it'll be them and Philly in the NFC title game, right? That's been the talk. They are now sitting at 5-2. Seattle is sitting at 4-2. And these
Yeah.
two teams play 2 of the 3. They play in a 3-week period twice toward the end of the season. So, I mean, Do we think that division might actually be up for grabs, or do we still think San Francisco is going to control it?
Are we also completely writing off the Rams now? Like they lost to the Steelers, which is bad. No one should lose to the Steelers.
Yeah,
I will say
yeah,
the Steelers have Deontay Johnson back and they look a little bit better with him. But the Rams beat or I'm sorry, the Seahawks, like you said,
yeah,
have beaten Detroit this year. Detroit is like a solid team, although they got their butts kicked by the Ravens this
sure
weekend.
did.
But their other wins have come to Arizona, the Giants, and Carolina, and they have losses to the Bengals and the Rams. So they haven't beaten a team with a
Right.
winning record other than Detroit, which was in
Yep.
overtime.
Yep.
It was a big game. But coming down the stretch, like they've got to play all the AFC North teams now who have, kind of hitting their stride. Like Cleveland's defense looks really good. Baltimore's offense might have finally put some things together. So I'm kind of like, Geno Smith has played well. He's doing very well on the Seahawks offense again. Like last year was not a fluke, but I'm kind of like, okay, I want to reserve judgment on the Seahawks a little bit because so far against tough teams, they have not really they haven't played any yet. It's kind of like the Dolphins. Like the Dolphins, if you look at who they've beaten,
Right.
I don't
Yep.
think they've beaten a team with a winning record yet.
Yeah, yeah, it's been more of a struggle for them, and I called that game Sunday night while it was 31-17, the Dolphins offense only put up 10 because they had a pick six on the defensive side of the ball. So kudos to the Philly defense for that. The other team, real quick, just because of the ancillary thing about it, Detroit's sitting there at 5-2, Minnesota at 3-4, 2 games back. They're another team that they play each other twice in a 3-week period. So they still have the 2 games against one another. But the ancillary thing is in another, week, we have the trade deadline, and everybody was talking about should the Vikings trade Kirk Cousins. Now, it's very easy to say, hey, trade somebody, but you got to find a dance partner, right? Somebody has to
Right.
be willing to take him, knowing it might be a year rental, and you have to give up assets for it. The latest team people talked about was the Cleveland Browns. With Deshaun Watson, you're not sure about him, plus he's not playing well. How far is PJ Walker going to take you? You have an unbelievable defense. So
Yeah.
maybe you get a guy like Kirk Cousins and maybe you can make a run. But what is Minnesota thinking? Because we don't think Minnesota is going to keep him next year. If they try and tag him, I think it's like $200 million. I'm obviously being facetious. It's not that much, but it's a ton of money. I
It
don't
is
think
a lot.
they want to sign him to another long-term deal, but with Detroit getting dumped the way they did, Minnesota winning that game, they still played Detroit twice. Do you wonder if they're going, you know what? Everybody was handing it to Detroit. Maybe we can still be there in the end.
I think the Vikings should punt on the season now that you have a superstar quarterback like Tyson Bagent in your division. Like, there's no way they're going to be able to beat the Bears. But I do think Kirk has a no trade clause in
He
his
does.
contract,
He
so he would
does.
have to waive
He would
that
have
to
to
be
waive it.
traded.
Yes.
I'm with you though. I don't necessarily know who. I get the Browns trading for him. Like, are you really going to punt the rest of the season on your $230 million guaranteed quarterback? I don't know what's going on with Watson. Like,
I
he
don't
didn't
either.
play because of the shoulder contusion. And then this weekend, he went in concussion protocol, apparently cleared concussion protocol, but
Yes.
they left PJ Walker in the
Yep.
game, which is really interesting. Like, I don't entirely understand that. But that I think that would be really surprising to me if you trade for Kirk Cousins to the Browns. I'm with you. Their defense is legit.
Oh,
Myles Garrett is so good. Probably the defensive player of the year front runner
yep.
right now, like 6 weeks or 7 weeks into the season. But that would shock me just from like an optics perspective for Cleveland to do that.
Cleveland defense is giving up 18 yards a drive on average, which is historic in that.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then you saw Myles Garrett just jump over the line on the field goal to block them. And again, you can do that as long as you don't put your hands on the offensive lineman and use leverage. It's legal, but you don't think people can do that without touching the O-line. He's a 280 to 290 pound freakazoid that jumped them without putting his hands on them. It's ridiculous how good he is, which kind of leads to looking at the AFC. Kansas City's the top team for sure, right? But we're changing, right? It was Buffalo, and now Buffalo is sitting there with 3 losses. Then it was Miami, right? And then Miami gets dumped by Philadelphia. So now is it Baltimore? After crushing Detroit, that offense looked like the complete the complete kind of thing that Todd Monken was brought in for. Lamar only ran the ball 9 times, and they weren't all, regular, designed runs. There was some scrambling, and he passed the ball incredibly well. So it seems like we're trading the mantle of who's second best in the AFC every week, and now it's Baltimore.
Yeah. Also, I want to go back. I said Kirk Cousins going to the Browns would shock me for optics reasons. The Browns don't care about optics. They
No,
signed
they
Deshaun
don't.
Watson and gave him
No.
230 million.
No.
So self-edit.
Yeah.
Rewind, put that sentence at the end there.
They
don't care about
care
that.
less about optics, morals, anything like that. They don't care.
They don't care.
No.
But I mean, so is the question, it's Chiefs and then who underneath the Chiefs?
Right.
Because
yeah.
I mean, I thought the Bills Patriots result this weekend was one of the most confusing.
Stunner.
Like, Bill Belichick signs an extension after all of this. Like, is Bill Belichick losing his marbles? What's going on in New England? Nope, we're keeping him. He's sticking him around. And then they beat, a division rival in the Bills, who, like, the Bills have been so up and down. I don't think I would put them in like my top 4, top 5 in the AFC. I don't trust them either.
Yep.
It's like some games, like Josh Allen is amazing. He's like the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life. And some games, like, they can't score. It's crazy. I don't know. I still like the Dolphins, even though, they got their butts kicked. And I just said that they haven't beaten a team with a winning record. I'm pretty sure this season they've beaten the Panthers, the Giants, the Broncos. They, put 70 points on the Broncos. The Chargers are so abysmal. I don't know what's going on with them. But I think the Dolphins are still really good, and I think I will probably be saying that about the Ravens in a couple weeks. I watched them play, against the Steelers 2 weeks ago. Their offensive players dropped like a combined 500 passes, and they couldn't do anything against the Steelers defense, which is a good defense in a lot of positions. But I still kind of want to watch them play a few more games against some of the other teams in the division.
Yeah, the Chargers. The Sunday night game is Chicago at the Chargers. That's the game I have to call Sunday night. And wow, I mean, I don't know if Justin Fields is going to be back from the dislocated thumb. Maybe we get another Tyson Bagent out there who played well. Only had 8 incompletions, didn't turn the ball over as the Bears got a win. But I thought my son Mike had a really good analogy about Miami. You looked at the Miami and Philly game, again, which I was fortunate enough to call in Philadelphia. Philly went back to their Kelly green, the colors I wore when I was in Philadelphia.
I love those uniforms.
I wish they would stay with those uniforms. I think they're fantastic. But what he said, I think, is right, that Miami is like a Ferrari or like a high-tech sports car where if one stone pops up into the engine, it can kind of get rattled. And Philadelphia is like a car from the Mad Max series that just runs into everything, gets bashed, and just
there's a guy playing the electric guitar.
Yeah, and they just keep going. They can't get run off the road. I thought that was a pretty good analogy. So I'm still kind of with you on Miami. In the what have you done for me lately moment, it's kind of Baltimore. I think everybody is going to keep an eye on. We'll see. And I think quickly in the NFC. Philadelphia and the only team obviously with one loss. San Fran just went back-to-back losses. I don't know who else to put there, right? I mean, it's certainly not as deep as the AFC. And we had said Philly, San Fran, Philly, whatever order you wanted, and then Detroit, and they just get dumped the way they did. Dallas, we're still not sure of. So I don't know where to go outside of Philadelphia and San Francisco still.
I feel less inclined to say anything nice about the Lions this week. And like I was watching football with one of my friends who's a NFL reporter, and they were like, I love after, the first 8 weeks when you see, a lot of teams, it's like a regression to the mean. Like all the early season darlings get their butts kicked, and then we're like, oh, okay, same old Lions. I don't know if that's fair. I do think they're better than they have any business being a football team in Detroit.
Yeah.
Having the history that the Lions do. But I am less inclined to be like, yeah, wow, they're legit. Like they're for real. They got absolutely beaten by the Ravens 38-6.
They did. And I think more people are now going to wonder, can the Vikings catch them than Detroit if they can run away?
Or Tyson Bagent. I mean,
there you go. Can he bring those Bears up from a 2-5 record right now? We will see. All right, that's our NFL recap. Coming up in college football, again, since Jess and I last did a pod, a lot has changed. Some we're very happy about of what has happened to a big Notre Dame rival. And the other is intriguing, and it involves a camera. And should you be at a game with a camera, and should you be filming certain things that you're not allowed to film? We'll talk about that next. All right, Jess, as I said, and we've talked about, we've been apart for a couple of weeks, and we didn't do a show since Notre Dame played USC. And by the way, that was Notre Dame's fourth night game against an undefeated ranked opponent, which, was very, very difficult. The week before they had lost to Louisville, and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, what a schedule. It was Notre Dame's second loss, so they were out of the playoff hunt here. And here they were taking on number 10 USC. What a fun game that had to be to watch for you, right? I mean, my wife and I were at the game. Man, was that fun to watch. That defense just absolutely destroyed Caleb Williams in that offense. And then USC goes and loses again to Utah, something they've done for the last few years anyway. So they're out of the playoff picture. Caleb Williams is out of the Heisman picture. So, and that all started with a loss to Notre Dame. So we should feel good about that.
I'm just still in shock about it. Like, I think at the, 30-second mark of the game, I just immediately blacked out for the rest of it. Like, Caleb Williams threw an interception on the first drive, and I was like, this is going way too well. Like, something is amiss, because we Notre Dame fans are a little traumatized this season playing in these primetime games. The best news of my week, by the way, was the Clemson game will probably be at 3:30. I was like, thank God, I can't do this anymore. I'm also going to be at a wedding that day, so I'll be able to watch it before the wedding starts. I agree. Yeah. So anyways, Mike, I completely disassociated, because at halftime, when that whole Marcus Freeman calling a timeout halftime debacle happened, Notre Dame was up, I think 3 scores, maybe 2 scores. I can't remember. USC kicked a field goal. And I was like, okay, this is going way too well. If Notre Dame blows it, this is going to be one of the most epic losses of my lifetime. And that includes the epic loss to Ohio State earlier this season, where they had 10 men on the field. You can't lose a game where the other team's quarterback gives you 3 interceptions and you score touchdowns on them. So I was panicking, even though the rest of the game, USC never got a lead. They never got within 1 score. I am so traumatized by watching Notre Dame football that I could not even enjoy it. So I've been enjoying it since it ended. I've been basking in the reaction from USC fans, and also the reaction from Oklahoma fans, who have been just rubbing it in. They're all, they kind of had the similar, not the same, Lincoln Riley relationship that a lot of Notre Dame fans have with Brian Kelly. The difference is Brian Kelly didn't bring a bunch of players with him to LSU. Logan Diggs transferred there a year later, and he tried to bring some of the coaches with him, but most of them said no. Lincoln Riley, brought Caleb Williams with him. So a lot of player turnover at OU, and they did not do well with Brent Venables in his first year as a head coach. So now they're watching Lincoln Riley flounder at USC, and they're more excited than Notre Dame fans are.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame fans are very excited about it. There's been, I read Bill Plaschke's column this week that absolutely hammered Lincoln Riley, because he has the same record as Clay Helton through 22 games. He didn't make players available to the media after they lost to Utah, and all of these reasons. Like, USC hasn't addressed their major issues on defense with Alex Grinch, and now they have 2 losses. They're more than likely out of the playoff conversation, and you can't look at their schedule down the stretch. You get the games against Washington and Oregon, and USC or UCLA, sorry, who has a really good defense. We don't talk about them very much because they have lost a couple games already, but they have a tough stretch, and it doesn't look good. They're not going to play for a Pac-12 championship, more than likely. And now that, I've seen people in the media say that Caleb Williams should sit the rest of the season.
Yeah,
which
what do
I
you
think
think
is
about
crazy.
that? So this is where we are. We're to the point where we have had a high school player who committed to Colorado. Once his team, I think they started out 2-4 or right in that area there, stopped playing because he wanted to. And it wasn't because he didn't want to get hurt. It was because he wanted to graduate early in that December so he could go to Colorado. And he didn't plan that until this year. So he had to take a bunch of extra classes. And he said he couldn't fit football in as well. And he wanted to get to college, to which my thought is everybody can make the choice you want. But man, high school football is kind of the last bastion of just go have fun with no responsibilities. And you kind of gave that one up as
Yeah.
the hurry to get to
Well,
college, you know?
yeah, when as we've professionalized college football, the trickle down effect is that, high school football is now you're making business decisions when you're 16, 17 years old. That's probably been the case for a while, but I think now, high school football has become a lot more visible in like the way that we track recruiting now. Like these
Right.
these high school players are if you're a football fan, some of them are like household names.
Amazing. Well,
So
what do you
I'm
think of
with
the
you.
Caleb
It is
Williams thing?
amazing.
What do you think of the
So
Caleb Williams thing?
I if he wants to sit out because he doesn't want to get hurt, he doesn't want to screw up his draft chances. I think it is his choice. He can do whatever he wants.
Sure.
I do
Yeah.
think it's a big gamble. I do think after the last two, and I don't even know if he's considering this. This is
Right.
something that
This
I
is all
saw
people around him.
people around
Well,
around,
the
college
dad
football.
who brought up he may not even want to go to whoever picks number
Yeah.
one. He may not, which stop it. Because
Which
you know what,
The
if
Bears aren't gonna draft him if they have Tyson Badgett, so it
well,
doesn't matter.
boom, there you go. But the thing about that is, as I've said, so you wait another year to go number one. Guess what? You're going to a bad team then too.
Yeah,
So that
that's
stuff,
valid.
I don't want to hear it. That's not going to happen. If he's going to go number one, he is going to be gone. But to stop playing with a handful of games to go, we already know guys sit out bowl games, and I get it.
I
Or
get that.
or if
Yeah.
you're injured, if you're nicked a little bit, say, you know what, I'm going to cover my bases. But just to stop playing once you're kind of out of it for a title, that would be, and I guess we're going to keep getting new ground broken with some of the actions here, and that's what we might get.
Well, it has happened before, not with, quarterbacks, but there have been players like that have, sat the end of a season that maybe could have played, but had a lingering injury, and they were
Right.
like, "I'm gonna get drafted in the first round, so I'm not gonna do this."
But
I
this
do
is
think
no
though
injury. This one is no
no,
injury. This
yeah,
is just stop playing.
that would be a huge gamble because the last 2 games against top-rated defenses, he hasn't played very well. So I think if you're him or, any college player, especially at the quarterback position, this year is gonna be a stacked NFL draft for quarterbacks. There's a lot of talent leaving college football at that position this year. So you probably wanna have more tape than, what your most recent tape is, which is not very good.
Yeah.
I think after the Notre Dame game, if you're just box score watching, you probably thought like, wow, USC's defense just like Notre Dame, scored a bunch of touchdowns. They couldn't stop them. That was not the case at all. USC's defense actually was fine against Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame was able to score on all of those turnovers, but the
Right. Right.
turnovers were the reason
Yes.
that Notre Dame had the
Short
ball so
field.
often
Yeah.
in short field position. Notre Dame's offense didn't have to do anything in that game other than one great pass to Chris Tyree, which
Yeah.
I was ecstatic about.
Yeah. It was very good.
So so I don't know. I mean, I really do think that it comes down to like every individual's choice, and you can choose whatever you want. And I think fans that hammer college athletes who have to make business decisions should empathize a little bit because, a lot of us would do the same thing in their position. But I do think that Caleb Williams has a very good opportunity to turn things around, to come out of this, come out ahead at the end of the
Yeah.
season. You had 2 tough games. A lot of teams have 2 tough games. Notre Dame had 2 tough
Yeah,
games.
they did.
You can't like I think NFL scouts will look for any reason to ding a quarterback or to ding a college player, and sitting out when you're not hurt, I think would be probably not the best choice. But again, like he should do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, listen, it's his choice to do. As far as one other thing off the field before we move on, the 2 top teams, it seems like they're the 2 top, and maybe people feel there's separation between Georgia, Michigan, and then I think next is Ohio State, Florida State. I'm not sure how much I trust Florida State just yet. So here's Michigan, still has Penn State and Ohio State on their schedule. And what's going on there? The Michigan staffer, Connor Stallions, which there's no way that can be a real name, and yet we found out it's a real name. Basically, the Michigan is at the center of the sign stealing probe, and it comes out that this guy has gone to more than 30 games over the past 3 years at 11 different Big Ten schools, and basically has been caught taping signals on the sidelines, and supposedly now video is going to be coming out from the stadium surveillance video that is going to show this, which is going to be the ultimate damning thing when you're caught on tape doing it. And it is against NCAA rules to do this. Also, to send a staffer to another game, that was actually deemed against the rules because of budgetary reasons, saying
Mhm.
all teams couldn't do that, so they didn't want anybody to do it. But certainly filming, it goes back to Spygate, right, with the Patriots
Yeah.
and putting a camera on the Jets to get their signals. Mike and I were talking about this. My son Mike and I were talking about this as to, okay, so say they're found guilty of this. What happens? What is the NCAA going to do? I mean, it's like Notre Dame when Mike and Jake were here, the undefeated year when they played in the title, all those wins were vacated because of something that happened academically with one of their students, I believe, right?
Right.
And the wins were vacated. So what? Wins
Yeah,
vacated is
they
a
played the
joke.
game.
Yeah, they played the
Just
game. We know what happened, and that it had nothing to do with football. Now, in this one, you look at the record of the last 3 years, and it's two Big Ten titles, into the playoffs twice
yeah,
since this supposedly had been going on. And if you sit there and ask me as a football player, if you know the signals of a team, that certainly can be an advantage to you if you know what formation they're going to be in, or what play is going to be run, or what defensive for, whatever. That's an advantage to you. So
right.
but I wonder how long the investigation will take. Because remember, in college basketball, when all that was going on with the big probe going on in basketball, we thought, my God, basketball was going to be wiped off the face of the earth with all the damning things, and nothing has
Yeah.
really gone on from that.
Years
So
later, they
yeah,
were like, "Oh, infraction
exactly.
here, infraction there," and everyone moved
Exactly.
on.
So I guess outside of how, when you think of the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, you say, oh, between Spygate and Deflategate, blah, 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 as they dangle 7 rings and say, we
Yeah,
don't give a damn,
it doesn't
right?
matter.
It doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
what happens out of this?
I don't know. I think that the NCAA has wasted so much time and money fighting the s you know, the ghost of amateurism that they've lost so much credibility as a rule enforcing body. And so I think competitive balance is, and that is the reason for the rule. Competitive balance is a legitimate thing to try to, regulate in college sports. And if, the smaller group of 5 schools can't afford to send a staffer to 20 or 30 games ahead of time to videotape the sidelines, like I understand why the rule exists, but the fact is that no one respects the NCAA. So if they come out and tell college football fans that Michigan's doing something wrong, a lot of people are going to shrug it off, like you said,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
what's going to happen? Like, no, you guys don't do anything. You guys are just always whining and lobbying Congress, and you can't do anything that actually is good for player welfare or athlete welfare. So why do we care? I do think college football fans that are sick of seeing Michigan win a lot do care, and it's specifically Big Ten fans and opposing Big Ten coaches. So to the extent that they're able to, leak more things about Michigan and talk about how unfair it is and sway public opinion, that's going to end up mattering more than any infractions. Michigan still may win the Big Ten this year. They may win the national championship. They're a very good team. Um, and they're going to have to, face the cheating allegations like the Patriots forever. Does that matter? I don't know. To some people, I think it does. I'll call them cheaters forever because I hate Michigan. But
Well, see, there you
it
go.
just it just comes down to, like, no one respects the NCAA. It doesn't matter, and this seems like, maybe it should matter, but you're never going to get any sort of, like, punishment out of Michigan. And a lot of teams probably do it too and just aren't
Yeah.
as good at it, and
That's the
that's the
thing.
problem.
Yeah, that's a thing. They're not the first to do this, right? In maybe
Yeah.
in the way they're doing it, but they're certainly not the first to do it, and they got caught doing it. It's so wild. Your era, like, with my daughter Sydney, Mike, and Jake, for Notre Dame people, they dislike Michigan so much. For me, if I didn't go to Notre Dame, I would have went to Michigan. For me, it's always been USC. It's always USC. So I get more out of us
I don't
beating.
like US. I'm with you. The USC rivalry, I think you're right. Like, it definitely is the main rivalry, but I think in the 2010s and 2020s, the Michigan
Yeah,
rivalry, because of all the back and forth and, like, close games and everything, has really
it's jumped up
taken
there. I,
precedent.
I
It
agree.
has, for sure. Even though it's not as old as of a rivalry.
No,
So it
not at all. The thing I find interesting is Michigan fans complaining that, oh, they're just doing this to Harbaugh to get him to the NFL. and get. I'm like, listen, Michigan has just been on the scene for the last couple of years. I didn't see things like this happening to Nick Saban or to Dabo Swinney or the teams that were dominant for the last 5-6 years or more every year. Michigan has just been the last couple of years. This is their kind of their third year. So I don't know much if I believe that, but you wonder, with the stupid bought a cheeseburger for a kid and got suspended for 3 games. And if
That's
this
what I mean.
and if this has legs, but you wonder if it will make Harbaugh kind of like, this is ridiculous, and know some maybe violations might be coming, and pull a Pete Carroll, right? When Pete was at
Yeah.
USC and
Oh,
things were
yeah.
going haywire there with some things going against that school, he ditches to the NFL. We're always waiting for Harbaugh to end up back in the NFL. I mean, that seems to
Yeah,
be
well,
like a matter of when, not if.
didn't he take an interview with the
Yeah.
Vikings
Yes,
on
he did.
National Signing Day
Yeah.
last year? I mean,
Yeah.
that is
He's always flirting, and
they had to make
some of that can
3
be
separate statements.
right. But some of
last year.
that can be for negotiating for a contract, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe to get an extension or more money or something like that.
Well, I think when it's like James Franklin or like one of the coaches who hasn't been in the NFL, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe they're just using it as leverage. But I think Harbaugh actually like would probably, he was a successful NFL head coach, and I would not be surprised if he wanted to coach in the NFL again, especially because you hear more and more college coaches complain about how hard recruiting is in the portal and NIL, and it's like, that's why you guys make $10 million and the rest of us don't. So I take your whining and I raise you. We don't care.
Well
But
put.
I'm with you.
Well put.
I'm with you. I think the cheeseburger thing is a perfect example of like the NCAA, staking their credibility on like Jim Harbaugh bought a recruit a cheeseburger. That's an impermissible benefit. And then they're gonna self-impose like this 3-game suspension and make a big deal out of it and put their fingers in the air and like do a thing to honor free Harbaugh t-shirts, and everyone's gonna roll their eyes, and none of it really matters. And they're playing 3, cupcake
Right,
teams on their
exactly.
schedule. So nothing ever, it just doesn't matter. So it's frustrating because I do think like maybe we could have a conversation in college football about competitive balance and how to, keep things like this in check if they are a problem. And again, I think a lot of teams do this. I think it maybe is like the Astros situation
Right.
where like they did it too well and they were way too obvious about it, and people found out and they're pissed, and they're going to, now the other Big Ten coaches will stand on their high horse and say Michigan's cheating. That's why we've been losing.
Yep.
And it's like, no,
Yep.
you've been losing because you guys are not good. And Michigan and Ohio State
Are
the only good
better.
teams in this conference.
Yep.
And now UCLA and USC are joining, and UCLA is pretty good, but USC might stink again. So it's not going to get any harder for any of these other teams.
I'm with it. Listen, everybody, if you don't have a horse in the race, you're happy the Astros are out, that the Rangers beat them, and are now going to be in the World Series. And people without a horse in the race are probably going to be rooting against Michigan as well. All right, we wrap it up after this. All right, Jess, we've devoted our time to getting back together after we've been away from each other for a while, breaking down coffee and our coffee habits, and then diving hard into football, both NFL and college. But we have not been together since, I know we talked about it before, we had a couple weeks away from each other. The Las Vegas Aces, end up winning, which amazed me in this series, that they had played during the regular season 4 times and once in the Commissioner's Cup, and everyone was a blowout. And they were all blowouts, except we got one good game in this thing, right? They were all, each team was winning at home, but the Aces go back to back and probably are thinking, you know what, we could do this for a while. Congrats to them.
Yeah, and their parade and their celebration and their post-game press conference, like they are so happy. Yeah, Asia Wilson might be like one of the funniest athletes. Like she cracks me up. But yeah, it was the game that they won it on was in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center.
Right.
And it was such a back and forth game. Like the Liberty looked like they were gonna tie it up 2-2.
The best game of the series.
It was definitely the best game of the series. I was just like, I changed my mind like 10 times. I'm like, oh, but it'd be great if it went to another game.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, but I don't want I don't want Vegas to win on the Liberty home court.
Right.
And the fans were going crazy. And then Vegas won in the most like brutal way. I mean, they were playing great defense. They were able to force a really tough outside shot to Courtney Vandersloot. She airmailed it. And then, Jonquel Jones had like quarter of a second to try to get it in, which she did, but the buzzer went off, so it
Right.
didn't count. So that would have been like the game-winning shot at the end. But the Aces should get tons of credit for the defense that they played. They played really well despite, two of their starters being out, not including Candace Parker, who, got injured earlier this summer. It remains, I think she'll be back next season to play again, but like I don't exactly know what her status is. So hopefully she's back because she's obviously like a fan favorite. But regardless, like they didn't even need her in the series because they just were so good. And the Liberty are good too.
Yeah,
They
they are.
really are. Like you said, they won the Commissioner's Cup and it just wasn't like this playoffs just was not their best basketball.
So what will be interesting is these were the two super teams and the Aces take it. Is this going to be good for the WNBA overall if these two teams continue to dominate and the rest are just looking to kind of, when can we get up there? What moves can they make to get up there?
I mean, I think like it's definitely good for the WNBA because both of these organizations have committed a lot of money and a lot of resources to their teams. And shocker, when you do that, you win. And I think it's a great example of like, a lot of WNBA owners I think are content, not investing everything into these teams. Like they think of it as an afterthought, which is terrible. Whereas like Mark Davis, he's won his second
Yeah.
championship now with the Aces, probably will never win one with the Raiders. So like turns out investing money into your sports team is actually gonna, yield some results.
Right.
And also, like, the Liberty have one of the best home court environments in basketball. So, yeah, like, I think, having an actual successful sports team in New York is great. It's, great to market those players. It's great to have a winning, team in this metropolitan area because all the other teams stink and they're terrible, especially the basketball teams. Although the Knicks made the playoffs, whatever. But
Right.
still, I mean, I do think that it does send a message. Like the Liberty's owner, he's the one who got in trouble for, chartering jets,
Right. Right.
which is against what's in the CBA, because he was looking out for his players, wanted them to
Right.
have,
Yeah.
travel and comfort. And, I think that that's a great example of like that kind of owner who wants to actually invest in the team and invest in the players well-being and their facilities and their, home court environment. Like they are the successful ones and everyone else can do that too. And like some teams have the resources and some don't, but like why not invest more in your team?
Well, we know everybody in F1 has the resources to fly private, without question. So let's end on that in the last minute, a couple of minutes that we have. So F1 was in Austin, and it's Verstappen, Verstappen, Verstappen. I'm tired of talking about him. Wins another championship. So give us something else other than Max Verstappen. I think he won the sprint shootout. He won the sprint race. I mean, he's done everything. So blah, 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 blah. We know that, but what else is happening in F1 that we need to keep our eye on?
Well, there was a lot of drama in this
Right.
race involving Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc getting disqualified after the race.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Mercedes ran a really good competitive race, as did McLaren. Lewis finished in second. Lando Norris finished in third. But after the race, so Mike, there is a plank on the bottom of the Formula One cars. And after the race, certain cars, not all of them for some reason, get measured
Right.
by the FIA, the
Right.
organizing body. And if there's too much plank worn down, meaning the cars were running too low to the
Right.
track, they can get disqualified. So Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's cars were checked after the race. They found that the cars had too much wear on them. So they were both disqualified, which is, maybe you think it's not a big deal because Max Verstappen already clinched the drivers' championship, but there is still a fight for second, third, fourth place in the constructors' championship now. And so every point counts, especially, Lewis Hamilton finishing in second gets, I think, 18 points. So this was a pretty big deal. And I think a lot of fans are confused why they were the only ones disqualified and why they didn't check the other cars. At the same time, the sprint format is a huge cluster
Yeah.
amongst fans, amongst the drivers. Like most of the drivers hate it. Most of the fans,
Right.
some of them like an extra day if you can go to the race to see, racing other than, Saturday and Sunday. But what happens is you get less time to set up your car to make sure that the ride height is adequate for the track that you're at. So that's what I think the Mercedes and McLaren teams are saying was that, like, because we had a sprint race this weekend, we didn't have enough time to make sure the
Right.
cars were set up, so we didn't get the height right, whatever. So, anyways, big controversy. A lot of people are really pissed off. They'll be back this weekend in Mexico. I'm sure you'll hear more from the teams and the drivers about it because no one is happy right now.
All I got to say is if you want to waste 5-10 minutes of your day, read about the plank that's on the bottom of these cars and why they're there and how they get measured and why they get measured. It is you want to talk
It's
about
so
diving
tedious.
deep into the F1 weeds. It is absolutely incredible. But thanks for giving us a little bit of an update on that. But that's what it's about, the plank on the bottom
The
of the
plank.
car.
Why
Everybody,
why is there a plank? I don't
yeah,
know. Who
go
cares?
read more about it. That's on you guys to find out why there's the plank at the bottom of the car and why it gets measured and what it's there for. So, all right, Jess, good to be back. We'll get back on a roll again, and good to see you. And I'll talk to you next week.